Hey guys, it's the WalterFootball.com After Dark show for April 12th, 2024. That means it's 2 weeks until the 2024 NFL draft. So lots to talk about regarding that. Can't believe we're only 2 weeks away. It feels like, we were saying it was only a few months just yesterday. And now it's 2 weeks. So can't believe it. So I thought we'd have an NFL draft expert on the show. So can't wait to talk to Ben Wasley. We'll introduce him in 1 second. But before we do, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. All that would mean a lot to us. If you really want to help support the show, please consider super chats or super stickers. We've gotten some great ones recently. Kevin Kovac had $25 worth of super stickers on Tuesday. Slew with 444 super chat on Tuesday as well. So again, it means so much to us. To get that sort of support, because these YouTube ads pay absolutely nothing. So it really helps us out. So if you want to do that, that would be greatly appreciated. Or you can visit our sponsor. We have a special sponsor for today, and the sponsor is me. I am sponsoring the show with my third book. It's called Jerks of the College Years. So if you guys like Jerks of the Week on the site, this is basically a huge compilation of Jerks of the Week entries from my college years. I spent 6 years at Penn State. So as you can imagine, I had some crazy stories to tell. If you can't tell by the crazy characters on that book cover, I had a lot to talk about in the book. So I think you guys would enjoy it if you guys like Jerks of the Week already. And Tom said, this is my best work. That's his quote, not mine. So feel free to check this out. It's available on Amazon. It's Jerks of the College Years. So getting back to the show here, we are joined by Ben Wasley of Fantasy First Down. Ben, how are you? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. We haven't talked since literally during the NFL season. It's great to be back and have a chat to you. I love talking about the NFL draft. Love talking about something that I know you're legitimately the expert on it, so I get to learn some awesome stuff as well. But when we come on and talk fantasy, I feel like yeah, I know a lot about fantasy. I feel confident about that. We talk about the draft. I'm like, I still have so much to learn. There's so many little things that we get to talk about where I'm like, oh, I didn't even think of that sort of thing. But every single year it seems to get better and better and more interesting. You keep having new stuff out, so I'm really excited to talk about my mock draft, talk about some prop bets today as well. Looking forward to that too. So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into it. We'll look at your mock draft. When was this updated, by the way?
Monday.
Okay.
Oh, my Monday. So your Sunday.
Okay. Yeah. So it's updated this week. So we'll look at your mock draft and we'll talk about draft props, as you said. I can't wait to get into that. Always love betting the draft props. We made a killing last year, so hopefully we do that again. All right. So let's break this mock draft into groups of 4. So we'll have you can do the math. That's 8 groups. And then we'll talk about the players. So let me not share. Let me do slideshow here. So the number 1 pick, you have Caleb Williams going to the Bears. I feel like that's chalk. Number 2, Jaden Daniels going to the Redskins. Drake May going to the Patriots, and Marvin Harrison Jr. going to the Cardinals. So do you want to talk about your thought process between putting Jaden Daniels to the Redskins versus Drake May or even JJ McCarthy, because I feel like that's up in the air, and also Marvin Harrison Jr. As opposed to Malik Neighbors? I know that's kind of like people are 50-50 on that as well.
Yeah, look, the Daniels May thing is one I swapped since the last one I put out. That was updated for this week. It just seems to be the direction things are going in. I've always liked Daniels better as a prospect. I think he has more upside, and I feel like he's a little bit more ready to go as well. So I like the idea of him going there. I really don't know what the Commanders are going to do, but the odds are kind of trending in that direction. A lot more people are starting to say that they're hearing that Daniels is the guy there, and so that prompted me to change it. I put the odds according to DraftKings up the top, but because they don't add up to 100%, I kind of had to try to scale them back to try to work out a way to actually get the odds accurate as a percentage. So even though it says 42% Daniels, realistically, that's just because they've got to include so many other options. So I do feel like Daniels is probably the guy there, but I know you're still leaning towards May. I know Charlie's got Daniels at the moment. Do you reckon we'll actually know before the night, or is this sort of one of those situations where we're just going to have to wait and see until he's drafted?
I think most people won't know. But I suspect Charlie will get some info on it. And actually, it's funny that you bring up Charlie because he actually posted a hot press the other day, I believe. Unfortunately for me, it was after I published my mock draft. But he said that he's hearing that the Redskins prefer Daniels right now. However, I saw a report saying that the owner likes McCarthy more than anyone, and so I was saying on the show yesterday, we have yet to see what sort of owner this guy is going to be for Washington. Is he going to be like a hands off owner who will let his football guys do their thing, or is it going to be like the Panthers owner who famously took Bryce Young over his coach's wishes? I've said this a few times, so forgive me, everyone, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, we heard this like 10 times already. But for those of you who haven't, so the Panthers coaches, when they traded up to number 1 that night, they thought they were getting CJ Stroud and they were excited. And then the owner came in and was like, no, we're taking Bryce Young. And the coaches were like, wait, what? Wait, we all want Stroud. And the owner overrode them. And, it's obviously things can change, but right now I think you'd have to say that the coaches were right and the owner was wrong. So, well, again, we'll have to see what sort of owner this new guy is for Washington. But at the moment, I think it's Daniels as well, even though I have May in my mock draft.
Yeah, that makes sense. As for Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, the reason I put him there is I don't feel like it really makes sense for the Cardinals to trade down. They've already got another first round pick and they clearly need a good receiver. Having said that, because as you've said, Malik Neighbors is a guy that they see as nearly as good as Marvin Harrison Jr., it might make sense just to try to move down and then jump back up. I do have another team doing that in this mock, and we'll see that in a second. But I kind of like the idea of them taking the extra picks if they're available. But if they see Harrison as the better pick, I do feel like they need to stick and pick him. I think personally that Harrison is enough better than Neighbors that he's worth picking here, but I can definitely see a situation where they do trade down. I've seen a lot more mocks within the last week starting to have the Chargers trading down, and that for whatever reason has made me start to move towards, well, maybe it is actually the Cardinals that are going to trade down, because I think the more that teams start to see the Chargers trading down, the more teams are going to want to jump to make sure that they're definitely getting their guy at number 4.
Yeah. So we had some comments about what you said precisely about Arizona moving down. Like they already have a lot of resources. But I think what you could see with the Cardinals, and I think that this is something they want to do, and this is something they did last year, where they moved down from 3 to 12, and then they moved back up to 6. So I think you could see them trade with Minnesota. They could move from 4 to 11 and then move from 11 to 6. I think that's something they could do to secure one of those receivers. And I think that would be very smart of them because Minnesota's obviously desperate to move up. They've kind of signaled that already. Denver has no quarterback, and who knows what the Raiders and Seahawks want to do. Or maybe there's some other team that we don't know either. So there's definitely teams that are desperate to move up, and we know Minnesota is at least one. So I think that the Cardinals would do well to move down, and then if they could move from 11 to 6 and still get the receiver that they want, or one of the top 2 receivers, I think that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm moving towards, given that news that you're talking about from Mike Jurecki about them seeing that as a possibility and the odds of them taking Neighbors over Harrison as being a possibility, because I don't think many other teams will see it that way.
Mm-hmm. Polywana commenting, Brian Thomas Jr. over 15.5 went from -110 to -140, and only in a day. Tons of people are betting it. We brought it up on the show yesterday. So maybe people on the show were betting it, listening to the show. I unfortunately could not bet it because we don't have draft props here in Pennsylvania. For me to bet draft props, I have to cross the bridge and to go to New Jersey, which I do. I don't know if you know this, Ben, but I do this every single week to go to New Jersey to enter in my Rainmakers lineups, because for some reason in Pennsylvania you can't enter in Rainmakers lineups, but you can still play on DraftKings, which makes no sense. So I'm every Wednesday I go to the Trenton Thunder baseball stadium, and I spend about an hour there entering lineups. It's a lot of fun.
That's hilarious. So I have similar issues where we can't access DraftKings, but there's about 8 different betting websites that allow us to bet on the draft, but none of them have the Brian Thomas over-under. They don't have any over-under on individual players, but they have a heap of other random markets that aren't even available on DraftKings. So I saw that and I was like, oh gosh, that would be amazing, but I couldn't find a single website in Australia that allowed that. So that I mean, even now, even at minus 140, that's still not too bad. Like,
Yeah,
Thomas going in the top 15 seems pretty unlikely at this stage.
I think so as well. At least you have 8 options. You said that's not bad. I know
Yeah.
in Florida here they only have 1 option because for some reason Hard Rock has a monopoly in Florida. I don't know why they allow it. So
Yeah.
yeah, at least you have 8. Florida people in Florida, I feel bad for them. At least bad for betting wise. Bagley says, fortunately, it's one of those situations where it completely won't wreck your mock if you're wrong. He's talking about number 2, because whoever doesn't go 2 will definitely go 3. Yeah, that's I think so as well. And in fact, like I feel like quarterbacks to go 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1, 2, 3, 5 or something like that, something similar. So yeah, it won't be too punishing for your mock. So all right, let's get to 5 to 8. We have so you have the Vikings trading up with the Chargers and getting JJ McCarthy at number 5. Number 6, the Giants finally addressing receiver, getting Malik Neighbors. Number 7, Joe Alt to Tennessee. I have this as well in my mock draft. And then number 8, you have the Falcons taking Dallas Turner. This is another pick I have in my mock draft. So I mean, all these picks make a lot of sense. The Vikings moving up. We just talked about that. The Giants, I feel like they have to go receiver. They have really nothing in the position unless Jalen Hyatt does something in his second year. He was very disappointing last year, but they have nothing otherwise. And then Joe Alt, it makes so much sense to Tennessee. Dallas Turner, ton of sense to the Falcons. So you want to talk about these picks? I feel like, yeah, I definitely agree with all these.
Yeah, the one I'm really struggling with is where to put McCarthy, whether to have him trading with the Chargers or trading with the Cardinals. As I said, when I did this about a week ago, and I first decided to do it probably a week and a half ago, and when I did it, I hadn't found a single other mock that didn't. And since then, everyone seems to be coming out and doing it. So I'm not suggesting anyone's copying off me, but I'm just suggesting that maybe it is the thing to be doing at the moment. I was accidentally cool before it was cool. But as I said, that's really making me want to push towards trading down with the Cardinals. Everything we're hearing seems to suggest that the Cardinals are going to go down. So I feel like in my next mock, I'll probably have McCarthy switching back at 4. Regardless of what happens, I think whether it's the Chargers or the Cardinals, I think that team, because they're still going to need a wide receiver, is still probably going to still trade up to some extent to try to get one of the wide receivers that drops back. The only issue I have with the idea of them trading to 6 is, are the Giants really going to give up on the idea of taking Neighbors or Harrison simply so they can get back and get some more picks? I feel like they're just as desperate for a wide receiver as a lot of other teams. So I'm not sure if they're actually going to find someone to trade back into that slot to get either Neighbors or Harrison if they're the team that originally trades back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes a lot of sense. So we have a couple of comments here. Polywana says on Bet365, Dallas Turner is minus 200 to be the first defensive player drafted. While on FanDuel, he's minus 110. That's very interesting. Great value on FanDuel if anyone wants to take him. So yeah, great looking out, Polywana. Again, I did not know. I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't look at draft props when I was at the Trenton Thunder baseball stadium yesterday. Just wasn't on my mind. But I will definitely be doing that next weekend. I can do that on like Bovada or Bookmaker or BetUS, like these out of the US sports books, the offshore sports books, but I can't do them on like FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM. Like if I cross state lines, I can actually do it. So that is a great deal. FanDuel, like I feel like they usually have the best props out of all the US sports books because like last year I made a killing on home run props and almost all of them were on FanDuel, and I used OddsShopper to compare prices, and they're almost always on FanDuel. So I feel like for like futures bets, I think FanDuel is the best. So Pollyanna says, or verse, Charlie says Mitchell's dropping fast. Quinny Mitchell, yeah. Bagley says, who even would be a candidate to be the first defensive player if not Turner or maybe Mitchell? Who can you maybe I think Byron Murphy perhaps. I know the Vikings love Byron Murphy. Unfortunately, they need a quarterback, so they're not going to be taking him. But if the Vikings like suddenly believed that Sam Darnold was the answer for the future for some reason, if like they were like brainwashed or something, I think they would take Murphy at 11.
I think that's likely. It really depends on what exactly happens with Atlanta. I don't think it's impossible that a team trades up to 8 to try to jump the Jets and the Bears to try to get Rome Odunze there at 8. I think that's kind of a logical option. And if that happens, and if Atlanta then shifts back to 11, whichever team happens to have moved to 11 originally, that might change the first defensive player that we see off the board. It could end up being someone different depending on the need of that team. I also know that Atlanta, according to your list of meetings, has brought in all 3 of the big cornerbacks. So it's not impossible they go cornerback. I don't think it's likely, but if we think about who could be the first defensive player off the board, well, it could be Terry and Arnold. It could be Jared Verse if they do something weird, but you'd have to think the odds on Turner at the moment are pretty good.
Yeah, minus 110 is fantastic. Yeah, I think Atlanta would go corner if they traded down and Turner is off the board, but Turner just makes so much sense for them, Nate. Yeah. Bagley says, I hope that happens just so the Vikings have 2 players named Byron Murphy on the roster. That would be nice. Aren't they both? Isn't like Byron Murphy Jr. and Byron Murphy II? I think that's like...
That would be so confusing. It's like the 2 Byron Youngs last year. It was very confusing.
Right. Yeah, that's... any chaos is great. Chaos is a ladder, as Littlefinger once said. Mike says, what are the odds for Mitchell? Paliwan is going to have to help you out with that because I do not have that in front of me. All right, so let's get back to your mock draft 9 through 12. The Chargers moving down from 5 to 9 get Rome Odunze, which is very logical for them because they have no receivers. I should say that. I like Joshua Palmer. Beyond Joshua Palmer, they have no receivers. Number 10, Brock Bowers going to the Jets. I have that. I did have that in my mock draft. I believe I have the Bears taking him at 9, but you can see that going either way. Number 11, the Bears getting Jared Verse. So this is a trade back from 9 to 11. Makes sense. And then number 12, Olu Fashanu. Or as I said in my Emmett mock draft today, and Cassandra Future says I'm obligated to call him this Olubanga Fashanga in the Emmett mock draft, going number 12 to the Saints. So the Saints hopping up a couple of spots here. So you have a couple of trades. You have the Bears moving down 2 spots, Saints moving up 2 spots. What are your thoughts here? 9 to 12.
Yeah, I decided in my first mock I didn't really do any trades, so I wanted to try to at least show some spots where we might see trades. And I think one of the main trades we could see is Denver moving down because they do need to get more assets and probably because they don't need to pick at 12 in order to get Bo Nix. Or if they don't particularly feel strongly about Nix versus Penix, they can definitely move back because there's not a massive amount of competition around there to get quarterbacks that we know of anyway. So I've got them kind of moving back, and I couldn't really work out exactly who would jump up. I can imagine maybe the Bengals would want to jump up to really make sure they get the O-lineman that they desperately want. But I also think it kind of makes sense for the Saints to try to jump over the Raiders because we do know it's very possible that the Raiders take an O-lineman. And if the Saints specifically want a certain player, specifically one that can play left tackle, I think that they might decide to jump over the Raiders. I don't know that it really makes sense because the Raiders are probably going to go more towards a right tackle option, but it at least feels like the kind of spot where we could see a trade happening. The other spot that I could see that trade happening is that whichever team moves back to 11, I really do think it's likely that they move up. In this case, I've got the Chargers doing it, moving back from 5 to 11, and then moving from 11 up to 9. I could equally see them moving from 11 up to 8, but somebody's going to want to get into that spot to make sure that they get Rome, to make sure that they're getting that third good wide receiver.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think you're right. The team that moves down to 11 is pretty likely to move up to get one of the 3 wideouts you mentioned. Paulina says Mitchell is 10 to 1. Byron Murphy's 12 to 1. Might want to put 0.2 units on them as well. I would go Murphy for sure. Mitchell I think is a falling prospect, but Murphy, like if you're going to bet Dallas Turner to be the first defensive player, I think Murphy's a great hedge. So I'm on board with that as well. 12-1 is a great number for him. And because, like I said, the Vikings love him. All right, let's go 13-16. So the Raiders getting J.C. Latham. They finally get their tackle. They wanted Paris Johnson last year, but the Cardinals sniped them. Number 14, Telis Fuaga going to the Bengals. So the Bengals move up from 18 to 14. Makes sense because they are desperate for line help, and Fuaga could certainly be off the board by the time they're on the clock. Number 15, Quinion Mitchell. We just discussed him. Charlie posted an article saying that teams weren't as high on Mitchell as the media tends to believe. They were worried about his film from last year not being as great as they thought it would be. So maybe he starts to slip. But I've had Mitchell in the teens, but I actually had him moving out. This update I did this week was the first time I didn't have him in the teens in a while. And then 16, Troy Fatano going to the Seahawks. The Seahawks, they're desperate for interior line help, so they could play Fatano inside for a while, or move into right tackle, move someone else inside. A lot of flexibility there. So you have 3 offensive linemen and a corner from 13 to 16. Want to talk about these?
Yeah, this feels like the kind of O-lineman hotspot. I feel like we could see quite a few O-linemen come in here. And because there's quite a few teams that want to draft an O-lineman, and because it's a pretty strong top-heavy class, I can imagine a situation where teams are going to want to try to jump over each other to try to get to that spot. So I feel like the Broncos and maybe even the Colts are the kind of teams that could be trading down to try to take advantage of those teams that are desperate for O-line help. Where I'm really unsure is what the Raiders are going to do. Do they take a quarterback there? I feel like it kind of does make sense that they could want to take a quarterback, especially if the Broncos move down and that the guy that they particularly like happens to be sitting there. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if both quarterbacks just keep falling into that second round, because there's not enough teams that really need one that kind of push the desperate need to draft one. But it's interesting that all these O-line teams are also kind of the same teams that could do with a quarterback. So it wouldn't surprise me if they don't get the O-lineman they want, if they just decide to go with a quarterback. The other one I really struggle with here is what to do with the Colts. I don't feel like they really desperately need a cornerback, but I don't feel like they desperately need anything else. I don't think a wide receiver really makes sense there. There's no good value there. So I feel like they have to go cornerback, and I'll probably change it to Arnold after all that news in the last week or so.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that we saw the Seahawks meeting with some quarterbacks. I wonder if that's genuine interest, or if that's kind of them just playing poker with the Broncos and Raiders, being like, hey, if you guys don't take Penix or Nix, we might do it. So you better do it. And hopefully a good player falls to us. I wonder if that's kind of sort of gamesmanship they're doing. Yeah, I like all these picks. They make a lot of sense. Bengals trading up makes a lot of sense because, like I said before, Fuaga is probably not going to be there at 18. Stone Papa Smurf saying the Raiders take another Alabama tackle in the first round. Leatherwood. Alabama tackles have not done well. We've had Evan Neal's bust so far as well. Leatherwood. We had Jonah Williams, who's had injuries and didn't play well at right tackle. It's been a rough scene for Alabama tackles, so maybe you're onto something here, Stone Papa Smurf. Bryce saying Mitchell's the type of player to fall directly into the Ravens' laps at 30 and turn into an instant Pro Bowler. That's what exactly is going to happen. It may not be Mitchell, but there's going to be someone who falls to them, and we're going to be like, how did the Ravens get this guy? What are these teams doing? And like the teams drafting before them are taking like 3rd round prospects. And, like the Ravens get the guy who was supposed to go in like 16, 17, 18. They get him at 30. And then, yeah, he's going to be a Pro Bowl for them. He's going to be the reason why they get to the AFC Championship again. Like, this is what the Ravens do.
Best be like him or Latu or someone else that everyone else is just scared off, and they take the value.
Yeah, that it always happens. Just lock it in, always. And then Bagley says Colts are 100% taking Mitchell if he's there. Interesting. I wonder. I wonder why you think it's Mitchell, or Charlie said that Mitchell is falling. It could be another corner. I feel like Terry and Arnold makes a lot of sense. Nate Wiggins. There are going to be a bunch of corners going like the 20 range or 20 to 35 range. So I feel like it could be any of those corners. I wonder why you think it's just going to be Mitchell. Okay, let's go 17 through 20. Speaking of Terry Arnold, you have him going to the Jaguars, who were horrible against the pass last year. Number 18, Bo Nix. So this is Denver's pick here. They moved down from 12 to 18, still get Bo Nix. So good deal for them that they didn't fall for Seattle's trickery getting Bo Nix here. And Denver's quarterbacks right now, Jarrett Stidham and Ben DiNucci. If there's any team that needs to come out with a quarterback, it's Denver. So they get Bo Nix. Number 19, Byron Murphy. We talked about him earlier, going to the Rams as a replacement for Aaron Donald. And then number 20, Jackson Powers Johnson, going to the Steelers. They have nothing at center right now. So, yeah, these picks make a lot of sense, especially Denver moving down and still getting Bo Nix. So I want to talk about these four.
Yeah, I feel like I'm probably going to move Arnold up to the Colts next time, which will make it a little bit interesting for the Jaguars. It's interesting to see exactly what they do. I don't think it's totally out of the question that they take a wide receiver, and it doesn't really make sense. And yet at the same time, there's so much buzz about it. I remember Charlie talking about that like over a month ago, saying that the Jaguars are probably going to take a cornerback or a wide receiver or an O-lineman, which are the kind of a premium position player. But if they don't love Mitchell, and if Mitchell really is falling, and if Arnold's off the board, it will be interesting to see what they do, whether they trade down, whether it makes sense for them to try to jump over the Colts to get their guy. So I'm not really sure exactly what to make of the Jaguars. I know the betting odds are really weird. The betting odds were for DraftKings, like odds-on favorite. They're going to take a cornerback, but in a lot of the Australian markets, it was, like 30-40% chance of them taking a cornerback. So I don't really know exactly what to make of that. It's probably just us being a little bit behind that down here. But either way, I feel like you have to mock them a cornerback because there's no real obvious other option there. As for the Broncos taking Bo Nix, I mean, it's starting to move a lot more towards Michael Penix the more we go through the process, but Bo Nix makes so much sense for the Broncos. He just feels like a Sean Payton kind of guy. He's just so like safe, refined, like basic, will just operate the system. I just feel like it's the kind of thing that Sean Payton would do, even though Michael Penix might be the more exciting player. So it's really hard for me to draft him there, but you can't imagine the Broncos passing on him because they don't have that second round pick. So I'm not sure what they can do other than just trying to trade down until it feels like the right value for them.
You know what this feels like is Steelers taking Kenny Pickett a couple years ago, where, they didn't have a quarterback and they saw Pickett there and they're like, oh, well, let's take him around this range, 19 as opposed to 18. And we've seen what happened to him. I feel like Denver is going to make the sort of mistake that we saw with, remember Christian Ponder went first round, Blaine Gabbert went first round. The only reason they went first round is because those teams are so desperate for a quarterback. I think whoever takes Bo Nix is gonna be punished for it. I think I don't know. I just don't see him as a first round prospect. And in fact, I'm not even that high on McCarthy either. I think all these guys are getting pushed up. I love the first three, but McCarthy, Nix. I think the Penix, if he didn't have the injuries, I think he'd be a lot higher. But that's me personally. I could be wrong on these guys, but I was way down on Pickett when he was chosen in the first round to the Steelers. But so we have some comments here. James saying, does Nate Wiggins have a shot to be the first corner off the board? Pollyanna is replying, yes, I bet him at 25-1 to be the first corner taken. It's great value, way too high. I agree. That is a lot of value. Now, I don't think he's gonna be the first corner, but 25-1 odds, you can't really pass that up. I think. Yeah, that's really good. It's a good bet, I think. Bagley says, if there's any team in the top 16 that will like him, it's probably the Raiders. Also, word on the street is the Steelers are head over heels in love with Mims. I can't see them passing on him even for JPJ. Where have you heard that? I haven't seen any love for Mims. If you provide a source, I'd be appreciated because I could put that in the rumors page. But I have not heard that. But I know that they like JPJ. They brought him for a visit. Makes a lot of sense, and they need a center. So, and Mims is a guy.
I haven't heard anyone talking about Mims to the Steelers at all. I've only heard people talking about interior guys. So that's a little bit surprising. I will say I did manage to get Wiggins as first cornerback off the board as 31-1 in Australia. So
nice.
At least we're winning something here.
That's pretty good. I can drive to Trenton. I can't drive to Australia, unfortunately, to Minnesota.
Not with that attitude.
Maybe one day. Yeah, if I have a brighter attitude, for sure. All right, 21 to 24. Amarius Mims. Let's talk about him. Going to Miami. Feels like he's a high upside guy with a low floor because of his injury history, but certainly a ton of talent to go 21 to Miami. Nate Wiggins going 22 to the Eagles. The Eagles had a ton of problems last year with their pass defense. Johnny Newton going to the Chargers at 23. So this is it's a trade here. The Chargers got this pick from the deal with Minnesota that we talked about earlier, and then 24 Tyler Guyton going to Dallas. I think this is a pick that makes a lot of sense. So Newton's a guy I just can't seem to fit in my first round. I always try and I always fail, but I think he's more likely to go first than second. So yeah, I like all these picks. They all make a ton of sense to me. Eagles not taking the Georgia cornerback, which is something they just take Georgia players. But I mean, Wiggins makes a lot of sense for them as well. So what are your thoughts on these four?
Yeah, I struggle a little bit with Miami because even though it seems to make the most sense to give them an O lineman, they seem to keep meeting with D lineman players, and there keeps being talk that they're going to get D lineman. I know there was talk that I think it was Charlie talking about a meeting Ladu, heard someone else talking about a meeting with Verse, and also some people talking about Byron Murphy to them as well. A whole heap of people to replace Christian Wilkins. So there is something in the idea that they might take a D lineman, but to me, it just makes so much sense to take an offensive lineman. I feel like Mims at this point is really good value. It would kind of surprise me if he drops this far. And if he does, they just have to pick him. But if there's not the right lineman there, I could definitely imagine them going D-line instead. Johnny Newton's another one I just really struggle to fit in, but I feel like with teams like the Cardinals and possibly if they trade down the Chargers there, it just makes sense that he's a player they need. It feels like the right range. So if he doesn't go there, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes to the Cardinals at 27 or something like that, because there is enough quality, I think, for him to be a first-round player. I think he's a really heavy favorite to go in the first round, according to most bookmakers.
Yeah, I think he will. Like I said, I think he will as well. I just have a tough time placing him. All right, so 25 through 28, we get to the Packers drafting Graham Barton. As someone brought up on the show yesterday, he's a heavy favorite to go first round. So he's another guy I don't have in my first round, but I want to get him in. Just struggling a little bit to do that, but I'll try to find a place for him. Number 26, the Buccaneers going Latu. So he's a guy like Mims who is high upside, but bad injury history. So he could fall a little bit. And I think that 26 is about right. I think 21 through 30, like anywhere in there, like whereas before I had him in the teens, and then we learned that he has that injury history. So we dropped him. Number 27, Kool-Aid McKinstry going to the Cardinals. Arizona really needs cornerback help. And then number 28, Brian Thomas Jr. going to the Bills. I feel like our resident Bills fan, John Sanders, would love this pick. In fact, I think the Bills could even trade up for someone like Brian Thomas. Maybe not all the way to 15, but like to maybe the high 20 or like early 20s, something like that. So, yeah, the Bills obviously need a receiver. So I want to talk about these four picks.
Yeah, with the Packers, I've kind of bounced around between giving them a cornerback or more specifically Cooper DeJean, given he can kind of slide into safety as well. They really need safety help, though I think taking a safety this early is a bit crazy. But the idea of giving them a cornerback or giving them an O-lineman, I feel like Barton's pretty good value in that area. So I can definitely imagine them going either way there. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they end up going cornerback. If that happens, I think it's going to really affect what happens below them, because there are a few teams in that area, especially the Lions, who need cornerback. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's a little bit of jumping around if teams feel like their only cornerback left is going to go and they want to jump forward. But I feel like it's just going to be whatever falls to the Packers, whether it's O-line or cornerback. Latu's a really interesting one for me. He's kind of like one of those parabolic players where he can either go really early if teams decide that actually the injury issue is not an issue at all, or he could go really late if the teams decide the injury is going to be a massive problem. So it's really hard to know where to slot him in. There really wasn't that long ago before a lot of people were talking about him as being the guy, the first defensive player that's going to go off the board because his tape is that good. And now all of a sudden he's dropping so far that he might not even not even go in the first round. I feel like with that much quality, at some point, some team's going to have to take the risk and pull the trigger, unless there's a lot of reports from their doctor saying, no, the injury really is that serious.
We have John commenting, Miami should take Xavier Worthy. Imagine the speed on that offense. That's that's the sort of player that they love. So while
Second round.
Okay, well, yeah, but like, well, I think that like while they probably go offensive defensive line, it would be really interesting if they went receiver.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a lot of fun. Tua would probably get sacked a billion times, but it'd still be a lot of fun. John says he's not dropping that far. So I also have Brian Thomas going to the Bills at 28 in my mock draft, but I agree. I don't think he's going to make it to 28. Like I said, I think the Bills move up to the early 20s to take him. And so that's just me matching Thomas to the Bills, or I think the Bills go Adonai Mitchell or another receiver as well. And I think they do move up a few spots for that. So, I mean, do you think that Thomas has a decent chance to fall to 28, or do you think you also think that the Bills move up a little bit?
Yeah, I'm confident a team will move up. I don't know if it's going to be the Bills. I think the Bills make the most sense. They don't have that many other needs, and so they can afford to use capital to move up. But there's plenty of teams behind them that really need a wide receiver as well. So it could be that they move up. It could be that the Chiefs move up. It could be even Carolina or New England jump into the first round and try to jump over the Bills. I would be shocked if he makes it to 28, but I don't know exactly where to put him or who to move down. I just don't think there's a team that really obviously needs to move down in that range. Most of them are pretty well set and they can just afford to take their player. They don't need to desperately stock up on picks.
Mm-hmm. Pollyanna says, so another pick that I shared yesterday, over 10.5 defensive players in the first round went from minus 105 to minus 140 since then. Wonder if the viewers here are responsible. They could be if they don't live in Pennsylvania. So that's definitely for sure. There are 380 people watching this show live right now across all platforms. That includes, it's mostly on Twitter, but we have some YouTube, we have some Facebook, and even one person on Twitch. I don't know who that is, but they are watching live on Twitch. I don't even know if I have an account on Twitch, but I don't know how they're watching on Twitch. But yeah. So John says offensive tackle and receiver depth is so deep that it wouldn't surprise me if more defensive prospects go in the first round than expected. So that's what Pollyanna is talking about with the over 10.5 defensive players. So that seems like a low number. I know like it's gonna be a lot of offense early, but I could definitely see the over working out too. Okay, so let's finish up this mock draft. Going 29 through 32. You have Cooper DeJean going to the Lions. Makes so much sense because the Lions are really hurting for cornerback, especially with Cam Sutton getting arrested and released. Number 30, Jordan Morgan going to the Ravens. So this is the prospect who falls to Baltimore. Ravens lost 3 offensive linemen this offseason. Number 31, Chop Robinson to the 49ers. I feel like he's on the border of first, second round. He can go either way. So I'm kind of curious where he goes as a former Penn State alumnus. Just some extra special attention there. And then number 32, the Chiefs going Adonai Mitchell with Rashee Rice being in trouble and all the problems they had at receiver. It makes a ton of sense for the Chiefs to go receiver. So what are your thoughts on these last 4 picks?
This is more of a case of just slotting in the players that I'm pretty confident are going to go in the first round and need to find some spot for them, because I don't think it's likely that most of those guys fall out of the first round. I think after his workout went pretty well the other day, I think Cooper DeJean needs to go somewhere. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's a fair bit earlier. It wouldn't surprise me if he goes to the Packers. Could even go to Philadelphia. I think any of those spots is possible, but I feel like he needs to go somewhere. I know that Jordan Morgan, I know that you had on the side a while back that there are a lot of teams in the back end of the first round that like him quite a bit. I feel like he's that O-lineman that's going to slot somewhere in that area. I feel like there's a couple of tackles in that area that's going to go somewhere around here. He Graham Barton and guys like that. Maybe Kingsley, Suamatai, something like that. I feel like they're all kind of in that range of first, second round bubble. I feel like Morgan's the guy that's more likely to go in the first round. And I don't think Trop Robinson really makes sense to the 49ers, but they do seem to take a surprising amount of edge plays. They really like to have a lot of edge rushing options. I don't feel like Robinson's the kind of guy that can really reliably play on every down, but because they cycle so many guys through, I feel like they can use him as kind of like a situational guy. It's probably more likely they go O-lineman, but I feel like Robinson needs to go somewhere in the first round, so I put him in there. And it's the same thing with AD Mitchell. It would surprise me if he gets all the way to the Chiefs. I think probably someone's going to jump up and take him. I just don't know who. So it makes sense to place him in the first round and at least say he's going to go somewhere, even if it's not exactly there.
Would you have had Mitchell going here if it wasn't for Rashee Rice's incident? Or
yeah, I always have the Chiefs taking a wide receiver just because it's what I want them to do. I originally have them taking Xavier Legette because I feel like that's someone that can I feel like he's plays like a big-bodied guy, even though he's actually not that big. And I wanted to see that big option for them in the red zone as they try to phase Travis Kelce out. But the more I think about it, the more I think that's probably not going to happen. I also don't think they're necessarily going to take a wide receiver, but I want them to. As a Chiefs fan, I'd like to see them take a wide receiver. I just feel like it would make the transition away from Kelce a little bit smoother rather than all of a sudden being in big trouble.
Pollyanna says speedy prospects are known to go earlier than expected. John Ross, Chris Johnson. Surprised the Smock did not have Worthy in the first round. So do you think it's even Worthy goes second round, I assume?
Yeah, I just don't think he's a first round prospect. I think because wide receiver is so deep, there's so many good second round prospects. I feel like they're going to go quite a lot of them early in that second round. And Worthy's definitely one of those guys that I don't think really stands out as having anything really special that can make him that reliable number one receiver. And for that reason, I feel like he's more of a second round value. Can you see him going in the first round?
I can see him going late first round just because, like, I think that this comment says like speedy prospects are, like, go earlier than expected. So all it takes is for one team to fall in love with that speed. And they're like, can you imagine him in our offense? You know, that sort of thinking. So I think that it's more likely he goes in the first round than the second round, but I could see him also falling to the second round. I don't think he's a lock to go first round.
Yeah, I feel like if a position is going to drift into the second round, I think wide receiver is probably the position where you're going to see more players drafted in the second round than you would expect to. They're probably the position I can imagine falling more than most of the others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. John says we're all going to have to pick up the slack on finding the real killer now that OJ died. I saw a funny tweet today. I don't know if it was from Babylon B, but they said OJ now in heaven can ask God who actually killed this people. I thought that was pretty funny. James says, curious about the defensive tackles in particular. If Murphy goes off the board early, could guys like Jenkins, Hall, Fisk get pushed up into the first? I could see Jenkins going first round. I could maybe see Fisk. Hall has some character issues. I think we'll push him in the second round. I don't think it's crazy to think that one of them is going to go in the first round. You know, teams are always looking for defensive line help. And we saw surprise defensive tackle chosen last year in the first round, which I don't know if you expected this to happen, but the Cowboys they took the Michigan player from last year. They took Mozzie Smith. Yeah, Mozzie Smith. Yeah. I thought he was going to go second round, like early second, but he ended up going first. And so usually, like, if you have a defensive tackle who can get to the quarterback, I think that they're certainly live to go first round. So what are your thoughts on this? Like, any chance these guys go first round, or if you think so, like, who of these three is most likely to go first round?
I think the biggest challenge, there's a lot of players that we keep saying, they could go first round. There are a lot of players that could go first round, but most of the players who are locks to go first round aren't defensive tackles. I feel like there's a pool of players, and they include a few defensive tackles like Jenkins, like Johnny Newton. I don't think Johnny Newton's a lock by any means. And because there's that kind of group of players, we're going to see a couple that we don't exactly expect to go up. And so I'd expect that one will. I think it will probably be Newton before those guys. Will a third one go in the first round? I don't know that there's enough teams with a need. Maybe if the Cardinals take one, maybe if Miami takes one, maybe Detroit does something unexpected, or the Packers do something unexpected, they could both always think they could bulk up somewhere. So I think it's possible, but I don't think it's likely. I think they're more like I said, early second round guys.
Yeah, and I think the Niners and Chiefs are always live to go defensive linemen. As you said, the Niners seem to take a lot of edge players, but I think it's mostly defensive linemen in particular. Like they also went Javon Kinlaw, Eric Armstead as well in the first round. It seems like the Niners love bolstering the defensive line. So yeah, if they go defensive tackle, wouldn't surprise me at all. And maybe they like one of these guys. Bryce says Morgan to Baltimore would be solid. Groom him for a season to succeed Stanley. Yeah, I think that's a really good pick. I could definitely see that, unless it's going to be someone who falls to them, as we kind of suspect. John says Chiefs should use their first round pick for not approving that sales tax for new stadium. Yeah, it's I hadn't heard that, but it's interesting. Maybe they should do that. Bagley says Leggett is my draft crush, but Beach probably isn't going to take a 23-year-old with one good season. Yeah, although the Eagles once took a 26-year-old guard in the first round, so like anything's possible. I think Leggett's going to be a good player, but 23 is a bit on the older side. I mean, I noticed that you didn't have Penix in your first round. Any idea on where he goes in the second round?
Yeah, I think it wouldn't surprise me if next time I do have him in the first round, but it feels a little bit early when you think about the teams that need a quarterback. We talk about the Broncos and the Raiders. Is taking Nix and Penix at 12 and 13, does that really make sense? I don't know that it does, but at the same time, I don't know that they can afford to really wait until the second round either. The more I think about it, the more I'm leaning towards Penix going to the Broncos and Nix being the one that drops. I would think that would be the more sensible option for both of those teams. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I'd like to see it happen that way. I think Nix in the second round seems a little bit more reasonable, and I'd rather see the Broncos trade back a little bit and then take Penix. It probably won't happen, but I think it probably should happen. As to who takes Penix if he's the one that drops back, well, I can imagine the Raiders taking him in the second round. I can imagine the Seahawks taking him in the second round. In this mock, I'd imagine that the Raiders were going to take him in the second round, but I'm not sure that that's going to happen necessarily that way now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to be Penix who ultimately goes in the first round. If only one of them goes, I think it'll be Penix, and Nix will be the guy who drops. Like, he's also 24. You know, he's no young guy either. So he doesn't have the injury history that Penix does. But I think Penix won a lot of people over with his first of all with his pro day workout, and second, I don't know if you saw that story about like
his room.
Yeah, his room like being covered with plays. He's like it's like a madman almost. But
Hilarious.
coaches love that stuff. So yeah,
it's like all our NFL draft like sheets and stuff like that everywhere. My house is just full of it.
Yeah, that's yeah. I coaches eat that stuff up, especially like we've seen some party quarterbacks who don't study film at all, like all fail, like Johnny Manziel, Blake Bortles, Matt Leinart. Like, these guys were all busts, and they didn't really study film at all. Jamarcus Russell, I think it was Russell. I can't remember which quarterback it was, but there's that famous story where they gave that quarterback a cassette tape with, like, you know, the case, and they put a $20 bill in the case, and they gave it to him, and then he returned the film the next day, and they're like, "Did you watch this?" And he's like, "Yep." And they opened the film, and they opened the holder, and there was the $20 bill was still in there. So it's a funny story, but like, I feel like Penix would be the opposite. Like, he would just, they'd be like, "Did you watch the film?" He'd be like, "Yeah, I watched it 4 times." You know?
Yeah.
So
I haven't slept. I've been watching it constantly over and over and over again.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I think that I think he's more likely to go in the first round because of that. Bagley says Mims. He had dinner with Mike Tomlin before his Georgia Pro Day. Steelers always bring the house for the players they like, especially first rounders. So this lines up with their pattern of behavior. It's interesting. I'll really look into that. Did they also do that with Jackson Powers Johnson, or they do that with anyone else? Like, I'm kind of curious. But that's a good heads up, Bagley. Thanks for pointing that out. I'm gonna do some research into that. John saying, who's the most polarizing prospect this year that's not a quarterback? I feel like Chop Robinson opinions are all over the place. Yeah, I think he's definitely a candidate for that. I've seen him first, second round. I've seen like mid first round. I've seen him late second round. I've seen Jared Verse like near the top 10. I've seen him in the mid 20s. So he's another guy. I think Chris Jenkins has gotten some first round love from me, especially. But I've seen him in the second round as well.
TJ Tampa. I've seen a lot of people put TJ Tampa in the first round. I don't understand what they're doing, but I've seen it happen with a lot of people. Even Mel Kiper's putting him in the first round. I'm like, well, what are you guys doing? Like, what are you seeing here? I don't understand.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that. That's pretty funny. Yeah, I don't get that at all. Where do I even have TJ Tampa? I could just look that up real quick. We're here in my Excel. I
Like
have him
fourth round or something. You and Charlie both don't have him in your top 3 rounds.
Yeah, I have him going pick 119 to the Steelers. So yeah, that's first round's wild. Well, I guess we'll see. Crazier things have happened, but that's kind of insane. John says Brandon Whedon was drafted at 28 and he turned out fine. Yeah, exactly. Pollyanna says the quarterback always drops in the first round. Seems like it each year. Yeah, for sure. 2 years ago, it was Malik Willis. Everyone thought there was going to be Pickett and Willis in the first round. Willis fell. Last year, everyone was saying Will Levis going number 4, and he fell to the second round. So I do think one of these quarterbacks will fall out of the first round. I'm leaning toward Knicks as you would agree, as we talked about.
This is a better quarterback class than we've seen in quite a few years, though. It's not been a long time since we've had 3 legitimately really good options, and then also a little bit of depth as well. I think most years McCarthy would be bordering on number 1 pick because everyone would just keep hyping him upwards like's happened, and there would be no one else in the way to stop that from happening. I think this year, because there's a little bit more depth, we kind of forget that most years a lot of players get hyped as first-year picks. Now, like guys like Spencer Rattler, we'd be talking about him as, oh, maybe he'll go up into the first round, and that's not happening at all this year. So I wouldn't surprise me if he's the kind of guy that would usually get that hype and then fall down, as opposed to these guys that I think probably deserve to be at least on that bubble and will be pushed because they're quarterbacks.
Yeah. Yeah, as John's pointing out, teams are getting smarter with reaching for quarterbacks. I think that's true for the most part. It says Will Levis, Brady Quinn, Manziel dropping like 20 spots. You could probably think of more. I remember Aaron Rodgers fell in the 2005 draft. I remember that like yesterday. People were like, "Oh, is it going to be Rodgers or Alex Smith number 1?" Like people legitimately didn't know. The Niners ended up taking Alex Smith number 1, and Rodgers fell to the 20s. And I guess the rest is history. But yeah, I mean, even back then that happened. But I think it's more commonplace now where. Drew Lock's another one. He fell to the second round. There's a quarterback out of Memphis. I can't remember his name. He went to Denver. He almost fell out of the first round. I can't remember the guy's first name. Or the guy's name overall. We'll see. Well, I'll look it up. It was Paxton Lynch.
That was a while back.
Yeah. So yeah, he was another guy who he kind of slipped. And people liked him a lot, and he fell almost out of the first round. John says they give Jamarcus Russell blank tapes, and he said he watched it. Never heard of the $20 bill though. Yeah, Josh saying the same thing. Okay, so I didn't hear about the blank tape. So Jamarcus Russell got the blank tape. There was a quarterback who got a $20 bill in the in the cassette the holder, and so that was another story. So that's funny that they gave him blank tapes, and like it's funny because it's funny is that like maybe he watched like real tape and it was the same thing to him, just it didn't process just mentally. It felt like he was actually watching the same thing. So all right, so Mike says Kyler Murray watches lots of videos, but it's all games. Yep. The Call of Duty. If there's a tournament, you don't want to bet the Cardinals. That's one of the rules. All right. So you said you have draft props. I
just got a couple I thought would be fun to run by you guys, see what you thought. Okay, so firstly, we've talked a lot about Neighbors being the first wide receiver off the board. Marvin Harrison, you can get him at plus 400 to be the first wide receiver. Sorry, Marvin Harrison to be the second wide receiver as plus 400. That seems pretty good value if we think that there's even a reasonable chance that Neighbors goes first. Because if Neighbors goes first, Harrison's got to go second.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Although you don't, it would. I think if Arizona stays at 4, that has a great chance of hitting. But if Arizona moves down, I don't really know what the Chargers are going to do. So it's risky, but 4-1. Still pretty good value, I think, for that.
I
Considering
think
that, like,
you could easily lay off it by going JJ with 4th overall pick as well, because I think you're going to get pretty good odds on that as well. So if you combine those two things together, you're giving yourself a good chance of hitting.
yeah, I like that. I like that. That's pretty sharp, I think. But I mean, either way, even if you don't know, and if you don't combine them, I think that like 4-1 is great odds for that because I feel like it's almost 50-50 at this point. Charlie Campbell posted something about Malik Neighbors getting so much more hype recently, and like teams really love him. And then Harrison didn't work out at all, and they may have rubbed teams the wrong way. So, if Neighbors goes first before Harrison, I think that I don't know if anyone's gonna be surprised. Maybe like some of the people in the media will be surprised, like, on NFL Network, they're like, "Oh, I can't believe Harrison wasn't drafted first." Like how they overreact to everything. But I think like people have been paying attention wouldn't be shocked by that. And I think 4-1 is a really good number. Yeah. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the other way you could go about it is you could also go with Neighbors as the 4th overall pick. You can get that as 13-1, which is pretty crazy.
Wow, that's pretty good. Well, I know that Arizona really wants to trade down, but that Neighbors at 13-1 is fantastic because if they don't trade down, like he's going to be the pick.
Yeah, that seems to me, now that I think about it, probably the better way of going anyway. But it does mean there's only really one way you could go about it.
Do you know? Do you remember like which sports books those are? I know you're in Australia. Oh, that's on DraftKings. Okay.
Yeah, it's a bit tough for me to access FanDuel here, so I usually look at DraftKings.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So anyone who has DraftKings and who doesn't live in PA can bet that. I like that a lot. 13-1 on Neighbors, because like I said, if Arizona doesn't move out, it's gonna be Neighbors. Sounds like so. That's a great one. I'm gonna look at that when I go to Trenton next time.
Nice. The second one, Terry and Arnold is the first cornerback. You can get him as plus 225. So what's that? 3.25 to 1.
Plus 225. Yeah. No, it's plus 225.
Yeah, plus 225.
Yeah, so just two and a quarter to 1.
2.25 to 1, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, in Australia we use decimal odds, so that would be like $3.25.
I see. Okay. Yeah, they always trip me up. You can always switch to decimal odds on those sports books, and I'm like, I tried. I'm like, what is this? I don't like it. Just back. So Terry Arnold 2.25 to 1. To be the first corner taken. I think with Mitchell falling, I think that makes a lot of sense. Although you could really hedge that with Wiggins. With that, what number did we get on Wiggins? Do you remember? Was that 30-1 the one you were talking about?
Mine was 31 to 1. I think his was 25 to 1 or something like that.
Yeah. I like that. It's I feel like it's a good hedge. If you're gonna go longer odds like that. So yeah, big fan of that. James asking, Cardinals prefer Neighbors to Marvin Harrison Jr. Yes, which is it's just funny because Jarecki was pounding the table for Marvin Harrison Jr. even before the 2023 draft. He said that he's like, just mock Harrison to the Cardinals for 2024, and this is a year ago, and then now he's saying that the Cardinals like Neighbors more, and I mean, no one is more plugged into their team than Jarecki is. So. It's definitely worth listening. Bagley says that's insane value for Arnold. I could actually see him going to Denver at 12. He could go there early. I think that 12 to 16 range is not 16 in Seattle, but like 12 to 15. It makes a lot of sense. The Raiders could take him. The Saints don't have a number 2 corner. Colts, that's like the corridor for cornerbacks there, 12 to 15. John says, I just Googled the dollar bill thing, and it was from the movie Draft Day. Okay, sorry. Maybe that's it. They taped the $100 bill in the back of the playbook, and Bo Callahan didn't know it was there. Okay, yeah, I think that was a story they got from a real life incident, though, like where they put the $20 bill on the cassette thing, and that quarterback didn't find it. So I think from the movie they got that, and they moved it to $100 bill. But Draft Day was a funny movie.
Art imitating life.
Yeah, did you ever see Draft Day?
I haven't. No, we don't really watch a lot of American like sports movies here because the sports aren't relevant to most Australians. So I usually they don't appear on Australian TV much. So I need to
Okay.
go and watch it. I've only just started catching up on a lot of those sorts of things.
Okay. It was okay. It was not great. It was a fun watch, I guess. I had it on the background when I was doing work. And I assume you know the story. It's about the GM navigating through the draft, and he has like personal stuff. Like his dad was the former GM, and like his dad died, and like it was like the day of the draft, and like they had to scatter his ashes and stuff like that. So there's like side stories, and he has a romantic interest. And it was like I had a weird experience watching the movie because Jennifer Garner, who's the female lead, I thought for like at least half the movie that she was his daughter, and then they have this romantic scene. I'm like, this is kind of weird. Why is he's looking at his
This is
daughter?
taking a turn.
I know. I was like, wait, oh, that's his girlfriend. I thought it was his daughter the whole time. So yeah, maybe I shouldn't have watched the movie when I was still working. I seem to miss some plot points, but it was okay. But it was very crazy at the end where he makes like 5 trades or something like that, like, and then he convinces the Jaguars GM to take a player he didn't want just because like he bullied him into it. It was so funny, but it was still entertaining.
That is funny.
Um, John says the most unrealistic part of the movie was drafting a running back in the first round. Yes, these days, but I mean, it was not too long ago when we had running backs go was second, third, and fifth overall in one draft, and I know in the 2020 draft they had 5 running backs go in the first round. So the NFL used to be a lot different. Not so much these days, but yeah. And Mike says $20 bill had to be switched to $100 bill inflation. Well, I mean that was before. Now like current inflation now would be like $500 at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike says I like Draft Day. Yeah, it was okay. It was a fun movie. It was just not, it wasn't great, but it was okay. All right,
I'll
so
check it out and report back.
okay, yeah. Next time you're on, you'll have to
Yeah.
tell us your thoughts, especially with the trades that he makes. It's like the most insane thing like you ever see. Even like I was like glued to the TV at that point of the movie. I'm like what is going on here? How's he doing all these moves? It's just so stupid. Any other draft props?
Yeah. Well, we're just talking about the Saints maybe taking a cornerback. You can get 10-1 on the Saints taking a cornerback or 9-1 on taking a wide receiver. The only reason I mentioned that is I remember Charlie had a report that suggests the Saints aren't really that interested in taking an O-lineman, and they're looking at wide receivers and cornerbacks, which seems strange to me. So I wanted to ask you about whether you think that's actually a legit thing.
Receivers kind of interesting because they drafted one recently, but they're at the point of the draft where it's kind of like the dead zone for receivers. You have the 3 guys at the top, and then you have a few guys later. So, do they reach for Brian Thomas? Maybe.
Trade back.
Yeah, they certainly could trade back or trade up. Maybe they move into 8 or trade with Atlanta is kind of weird, but maybe they move to 9 or something like that and jump the Jets for a Dunze or something like that. I could see that. I think cornerback is probably more likely. I think defensive end is is likely too because they wanted Miles Murphy last year and they didn't get him. So I could see defensive end as well. But what would you say the number was on corner? It was 10-1.
10-1, yeah.
It's interesting. And receivers 9-1. Yeah, I mean, if you take them both and one of them hits, you're going to do well. So,
yeah, I thought it was interesting. Just given that report from Charlie, I don't know if he's had anything since then on it, so it'd be one worth checking by.
Do you remember when that report was from Charlie? Was it during the combine?
It's in your NFL draft rumors thingy, but I wrote it down as being from Charlie from like a month ago or something like that.
Okay, yeah, it might have been from the combine. But I wonder if things have changed. We're gonna have Charlie on again at some point, so looking forward to that. And I'll ask him about that Saints question. John asking thoughts on Brady saying he might play again. I didn't heard that, but you know what? It wouldn't surprise me. He's stayed in shape. In fact, they showed that video. I think it was during the combine where he's faster now in the 40 than he was when he was drafted somehow. But he loves football. That's like what he does, and I imagine he's bored right now, and just like bored out of his mind. He's like, oh man, I can still play. I wouldn't surprise me. I think I think he's more likely to play than not for one more year. but I could be wrong. What do you think?
I swear I've seen this movie before. The Brady going back movie. It wasn't bad though. I'd watch it again.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Any other props? All right, how many
Yeah,
more
I
do you
got
have?
you. Drake May to go number 4 overall. So if McCarthy goes in the top 3, which is possible, you'd think May probably goes at 4. A team would be desperate to jump up there, and you can get that as at 7.5 to 1. I don't know if that's good value or not, or if that's just about fair value. So I wasn't sure what you thought of that one.
When you said that, I thought it'd be a little higher. It's not bad though, because if you had Neighbors at what 13 to 1 to go number 4,
yeah,
and then you could also take May to go 7.5 to 1. It's not bad. Like I would. Do you know off the top of your head what Marvin Harrison is number 4?
like low, like -170 or something, -150.
That's interesting because I think we have some good leverage here because we know that Jarecki said that the Cardinals like Neighbors more than Harrison. So I feel like 4 is either going to be Neighbors, McCarthy, or May, because I feel like Daniels is locked in to go 2 or 3. I'd be shocked if Daniels falls to 4, but May could fall to 4, and McCarthy could be the quarterback at 4. But if Arizona doesn't trade out, it's going to be Neighbors. So you could probably take all 3. Do you know what McCarthy is to 4?
Yeah, I think he's 1.75 to 1 on DraftKings.
Okay, so I was hoping for
okay.
I was hoping for something better. But you could do all 3, and say if it's McCarthy, you probably about break even. But if it's one of the other guys, like you're gonna make a lot of money, and I feel like it's locked in to be one of those 3. I can't think of anyone else who would go number 4.
Yeah, I think it's really just because Harrison is such an odds-on favorite, you get really good odds on everything else.
Exactly, this is the kind of leverage you're looking for. So I like that a lot. That's something I'm going to look to bet the next time I'm in Trenton. Trenton makes the world takes, as they say. I don't know what they make, but that's the sign I see whenever I go into Trenton.
They make world money.
Yeah, hopefully they do. Sometimes these Rainmaker lineups are busts like this week, but I've had some success with them in the past. All right, so what's your next prop?
We've got one more for you. Dallas Turner to go number 8 overall, 1.7 to 1.
Okay,
so like plus 170.
It's not bad. I would certainly consider it. I want to hear what Charlie has to say because Charlie called Bijan to Atlanta last year, so I feel like he would have some information. But I don't see why not. But if it was like for a better number, I would like take it right away. But like plus 170, I think that's decent. And I feel like the only way that doesn't happen is if Atlanta trades out, which certainly could happen. And
what I did is I took Turner at number 8 and number 9 just to kind of hedge that a little bit because you can get really good odds on Turner at number 9. I think.
What are the odds at number 9?
Actually, I say really good. I'm exaggerating slightly. You can get really good odds on that in Australia, and on DraftKings you can get like plus 475. So you can still use that as a hedge.
Okay.
Because you feel like he's going to go somewhere in that range, probably.
Yeah. It's not bad. I like those. I do like our thing at number 4. Mike saying so watch Drake May go number 4. I mean he's one of our guys, right? It's Drake May, McCarthy, or Neighbors are locked in at 4. So just take all 3. I think that's like the best thing we've come up with in this one. So do you want to run through your draft props real quickly again?
Sure. So it was that one. So obviously Malik Neighbors to go 4. That's 12 to 1. You can get Terry and Arnold to be the first cornerback at plus 225. You can get the Saints to draft a cornerback at plus 1,000. You can get Turner to go number 8 at plus 170, although apparently it's plus 340 on something.
Yeah. The boss. If you want to tell us which sportsbook that is. Time? Yeah. Go on, Ben.
Yeah, and I think that were the main ones. There are a few ones around, like the Raiders to draft an O-lineman is plus 150, and Brock Bowers to the Jets is plus 140. So they're not bad because I feel like they're probably closer to actual 50-50. So you can probably get a little bit off that. But yeah.
Right. What were the last two? Sorry, you said Brock Bowers.
So
Just
yeah,
plus
so
140.
quickly, Raiders to take an O lineman is plus 150.
Okay. So I think it's quarterback or offensive lineman for sure.
Yeah, I would think so as well. They could go cornerback or something else, but I think the fact that you're essentially getting more than your money back for that is pretty good. And Brock Bowers to the Jets is plus 140, which I feel like is probably the most logical landing space for him. I don't know if there's actually that much value in that though.
Yeah, it's not a lot of value because the Bears could take him at 9. I think the Titans could take him at 7. That's actually something. Maybe I shouldn't say this out loud. I don't know. I mean, no one. I don't think anyone in the space is listening. But I'm currently like monitoring a Chigi Okonkwo Raymaker supercharged card. But like I'm scared to buy it because Brock Bowers could be the pick for Tennessee. But if he's not, I'm going to pick that up because it's very cheap right now on the marketplace. So I should, again, someone listening is going to buy it. So unfortunately, I guess I shouldn't have said that. But no, I think that I think Tennessee could take Brock Bowers. I feel like they're more likely to take Alt. But let's say hypothetically the Giants love Joe Alt and they take him at number 6, and then what do the Titans do at that point? Maybe, I don't know. I feel like they could probably play Bowers and Chiggy at the same time. So yeah, I can see that happening. But if he's there at 10, I think the Jets would have a tough time passing him. So like passing him up. So I don't see Bowers falling beyond 10. So
yeah. I don't know that 9 really makes sense to the Bears because didn't they just pick up Gerald Everett as well? So they've already got Kmet and Everett. I don't know that they really need another tight end.
Yeah, I agree. They don't need a tight end. I think it's a luxury pick for them, but they have multiple picks, and I think they're in a position where they could make a luxury pick. And I think I thought about the Everett situation, and I thought that maybe Everett was kind of a hedge of sorts. I don't think like Gerald Everett's going to convince the Bears to be like, oh, we have Gerald Everett, we're not going to take Brock Bowers. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I think it's kind of like a situation where like, okay, we're not going to get Brock Bowers, but at least we have Gerald Everett to be a second tight end. But I do think that Bowers is in play. I don't think he's the favorite. I think Odunze, I think it's, I don't know. In my mock, I have Bowers over Odunze, but I think I'm so 50-50 on that. I could see Odunze for sure over Bowers, but I think that could be the case. Or Dallas Turner if he's there at 9. I think the Bears' options are wide open. I think they're a candidate to trade down.
Trade down makes no sense.
Yeah, so that could definitely happen. So it'll be fun. I can't wait to see what happens. We got a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Degeneron. Damn, missed the first hour. Any cliff notes on favorite bets? So Ben just ran through them. Do you want to do it again for Degeneron? Sorry for me to repeat this.
Look, you're worth $5 of my time, my man. Of course, I got you. Yeah. So look, I think we decided our favorite one is Malik Neighbors going at number 4 overall. You can get it at plus 1,200 on DraftKings, which is pretty good. You can also get Drake May at number 4 at plus 750 if you want to hedge on that. Excuse me. Terry and Arnold, the first cornerback off the board, is plus 225. You can get Dallas Turner apparently on FanDuel at plus 340 is number 8 overall. I found him at plus 170 on DraftKings, but I think the plus 340, if that's right, is fantastic. I like the Raiders to draft an O-lineman at plus 150. And the Saints to draft a cornerback is plus 1,000. So I think that's pretty good value as well. And we're just talking about the possibility of Brock Bowers to the Jets is plus 140. Maybe that's not bad value either.
Yeah, because I think if he's there, he's the pick. It's just the question of him being there is the problem. Yeah. And Degeneron, we were talking about our favorite scheme here. So we came up with like the possibilities of number 4 to Arizona. There are only 3 possibilities for number 4. It's Drake May, JJ McCarthy. These are teams training up to number 4. Or if the Cardinals stay put at number 4, it's going to be Malik Neighbors because according to Mike Jurecki, they like Malik Neighbors more than Marvin Harrison Jr. So if you bet all 3, and I think McCarthy is most likely. So if McCarthy hits at number 4, I think you about break even. But if it's Neighbors or May, like you're going to win a lot of money because they're all, both of them are high odds. So I think that's something to look into. And this is possible because as Ben said earlier, this is possible because Marvin Harrison Jr. is such an overwhelming favorite at number 4 right now. But Jarecki, who knows the Cardinals more than any other person knows their team that they cover, he said that the Cardinals like Neighbors more than Harrison. So I've never seen Jarecki to be wrong about anything concerning the draft, and I trust him more than any other team reporter. So yeah, I like that. That's possible. Having that inside info and the leverage, like this is like what the draft betting is all about, like having the inside info. Like this is one example, and we're going to get more from Charlie. I'm looking forward to that as well. But yeah, thanks Ben for pointing that out, because yeah, it's a great opportunity, I think.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing about Brock Bowers as well, for him just to go in the top 10 is plus 105. So maybe that's a better option than going number 10 specifically.
Yeah, because I could see him falling out of 10. Like we talked about, like there are teams that could certainly take him, like as the Titans, Bears, and Jets could all take him. I don't think Atlanta would, because they already Kyle Pitts. The
Chargers might have
Giants
trade down as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Chargers, they moved down from 5. Would you have 5 to 11 to 9? Is that what you had?
5
the
to
Chargers?
11, then up to 9. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yes.
was when they were trying to get a Dunze. But if someone jumps them to go to 8, they could go to 9 to get Brett Bowers as well.
Right, the Chargers could do it. I don't think it's crazy to think the Giants could do it. Like if the Cardinals, say if there no trades happen, say Cardinals go 4. They take Neighbors, and 5 Giants. So Chargers go Marvin Harrison Jr. What do the Giants do at 6? They could take Joe Alt, but I think Brock Bowers is a possibility. They have Darren Waller, but he's been flirting with retirement, so they don't get their top receiver, and they could go Rome Odunze, but getting elite type of tight end, I think would be good for them.
Yeah, that's assuming they don't go quarterback, which a lot of people are suggesting they like McCarthy enough to take him at 6. I don't think that makes sense. Like they're priced into Daniel Jones. You really want to take your rookie quarterback when you can take advantage of the fact they're on a rookie contract, and they can't do that at the moment. So it doesn't really make sense for them to do it. It doesn't make sense for Denver to do it either, because they're paying so much for Russell Wilson. So I don't understand why these teams are starting the clock on their rookie quarterback when they're not set up to win as it is, and they're already paying another quarterback the money that they could be spending to build around them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree more so with the Giants. Denver, because like the Giants at least have Daniel Jones, and like he's, granted, for the most part, he's been bad in his career, but he did have a decent 2022 season, and he's never had a great offensive line in front of him. So I don't think Daniel Jones is locked in to be this bust. Now granted, he's coming off the torn ACL, so that there are complications there. But I like if Daniel Jones finally gets good protection, I wouldn't be surprised if he has like a decent career. I'm not saying he's gonna be a Pro Bowler, but if he's like a solid starter, I don't think that's insane. But the Broncos, like I said, Jarrett Stidham and Ben DiNucci, like how do you convince
Jarrett Stidham?
Right? How do you? Yeah, he had a great game against the Niners in week 17 of 2022. But no, like how do you convince your fans to show up to games if those are your quarterbacks? Like at least with the Giants, you say, okay, Daniel Jones still young, give him good protection, he could be good, right? If you're the Raiders, you have Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. O'Connell's a young guy. He had some bright moments as a rookie last year, and Mark Minshew has almost led the Colts to the playoffs last year. So, like, you could, if you're the Raiders fans, you could sell your fans on that. But if you're the Broncos, you can't sell your fans on Stidham and DiNucci, like at all.
Tom Brady.
Yeah. There you go.
New Peyton Manning.
Right, but doesn't Brady is he a part owner of the Raiders? I think that'd be
that would be hilarious.
If he's quarterbacking the major rival, I think that'd be pretty funny. That could be a movie even. So that's what I'm saying is, like, I agree with your take on the Giants. I'd be shocked if it's a quarterback, but and you have Denver taking a quarterback as well. Like I think Denver almost has to go quarterback, but they could trade down. Like I think that you having them move down is a pretty sharp move, because At 12, there's really no competition there. So they could take the best offer and then pick up some more picks, and then in the late teens go Penix or Knicks. And I think that's very logical.
I just don't understand what Denver's plan to win a Super Bowl is. Like, what's the path that leads them to have one of the best teams in the league? I just don't understand how they think that's going to happen. It's just really short-sighted management.
Yeah, I in my power rankings I had them as the worst team in the NFL. I don't know if
reasonable.
I don't know if you've done any thinking on who the worst team in the NFL is, and I did some thinking because I made my mock draft, but I can't find a team worse than the Broncos, because at least in the past they had a good defense, but they lost so many players. They lost Justin Simmons, they lost Josie Jewell, they lost some other guys, and then their offense is a mess. They lost their center, they lost Jerry Jeudy. I like Marvin Mims could be good, but they lost those playmakers, and they have nothing at quarterback. So I think they're gonna be dreadful.
I think if I think which teams are least likely to win a Super Bowl in the next 10 years, I feel like it's got to be Denver Broncos and Carolina Panthers. Like, I just feel like they both put themselves in really awkward positions where they can't really fully rebuild, but they also can't win in their current situation. The Panthers more so by taking the wrong quarterback and trading away a lot to get that guy and then still not being good. And the Broncos just not having any picks, but also not having any enough good players at the moment.
I think you're right. Those two teams they're in a messy situation right now for sure. The boss says Latu has been going up in odds that he's second at 8. That's crazy. Because he has the injury history. Now, like, if I saw this 2 months ago, I'd been like, yeah, that makes sense. But teams are scared off by his injuries. So I don't know if there is over under on him, but I would certainly go over. So you said, Ben, that you couldn't find over unders in Australia, but I'm sure you can find somewhere.
But they are definitely on FanDuel's, but I don't think there's one for Latu. I'll have a look, but I don't think there's one.
Okay. Yeah, he's pretty volatile given his injury stuff. So, yeah, I don't know if there's going to be necessarily one for him, but man, you could probably find it somewhere if you look hard enough. Bagley says, how often does Aaron Rodgers think about the Roman Empire? That's something that's come up a lot recently for things, but I imagine quite often. John says Russell Wilson move just killed him. Yeah. It's almost like the Browns dodged this with Deshaun Watson as well, but the Browns have so much talent on the roster, so like that trade didn't kill him nearly as much, but Denver doesn't have nearly the talent level that Cleveland doesn't, but Denver doesn't have the talent level that Cleveland does, like not even close.
There's no parlay on Latu.
DeJohn says 21.5 Latu, which is a tough number.
FanDuel. Must be FanDuel.
Okay, yeah, DeGeneron, where is that? 21.5. That sounds about right. I was hoping for something better than that because, I could easily see him going 21 to Miami. The Dolphins seem to like him, but maybe that's the ceiling too. So I would
depends what the odds on the over are though. If the odds have shifted a little bit because people recognize the name, then you might still be able to get something.
Okay, DeGeneron says local spot in Vegas.
Okay,
which is surprising to me because Vegas. I've been very disappointed with Las Vegas. I told the story recently, but so I was really frustrated because I was staying at an MGM resort, Park MGM, when I went to Las Vegas last time, and I was trying to access BetMGM, which is their U.S. sports book, and like you can't access FanDuel and DraftKings in Las Vegas, which I guess makes sense. But I was like, BetMGM is one of those sort of sports books. But I thought that if you're staying at a BetMGM property or an MGM property, you should be able to access BetMGM.com, right? You would think, but you can't. And so I wanted to live bet some golf tournament. And so I went downstairs to the sports book and I said, hey, do you guys have live golf? And the guy at the counter looked at me like I had 5 heads. And he's like, live betting? He's like, we don't have that here. I'm like, this is Las Vegas. What do you mean you don't have that here? Like, you're supposed to have everything.
Like, we have that here. How is that not possible? That's crazy.
I know. I was like, this is Las Vegas. You're supposed to have the best gambling stuff. And like, how do I better gambling options in New Jersey or even Pennsylvania, I have better gambling options than I do in Las Vegas. Not for the draft, but everything else. I can live bet anyone in golf right now. But apparently you just can't live bet in Las Vegas. It's so stupid.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I talked to I know a professional bettor. We've been friends for a while. Online we talked a lot, and I actually met him for the first time this past summer, and I actually brought up that topic to him because he lives in Las Vegas. I wanted to I was like why didn't they have live betting in Vegas? And he's like he like shook his head. He's like, this place is run by like octogenarians who just are so slow. They're behind the times and they just don't want to adjust. I'm like, it makes sense because I mean Vegas used to be the only place you can go to place a sports bet, maybe Atlantic City, but yeah, it's a lot has changed.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to do professional betting on tennis quite a long time ago for a firm, and we just had to do everything offshore in the end because it was just impossible to do anything at locations. They just moved everything to just random locations and did it online using VPNs. It was crazy.
Yeah. Bag is saying worst team is the Patriots. I don't think it's close. See, at least the Patriots have a good defense though. The Broncos don't have a good defense. Like I said before, a couple of years ago, the Broncos had a great defense, but that's gone now. They really don't have much on defense. Like the New England's defense is much better. And I think
they're about to get a good quarterback.
Right.
Like we actually know they're about to get a good player. Like they have picks in this draft, so they could potentially become good, especially in a couple of years once they've rebuilt. They're at least actively rebuilding.
Exactly. Yeah. They're going to get a quarterback at 3, and then atop the second round, they're going to get a receiver. So they're going to get Leggett or Worthy or maybe Mitchell if he falls. So they're going to get someone there. So they're going to look a lot better. Maybe like right now at the second, sure. But not even then, like the New England's defense is much better than Denver's. Parsons asking, any long shots on team to draft Bowers you like? Seeing Titans 16-1, Giants 35-1. Yeah, I just talked about that. I think the Giants are a possibility. No, I don't think it's likely. I think he's down the list, but 35-1, it seems like a great number. Tennessee, like I said, Tennessee 16-1. I'm scared of someone picking up that Chige Conquo card now. But I think Tennessee could take him. I think they're more likely to go left tackle, but they don't have I mean, they have Calvin Ridley, but Hopkins is old. Burks looks like a bust so far. Outside of Ridley, they don't have much like for the future at receiver as a receiving option, at least for Will Levis. So I think Tennessee makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I think like a slight sprinkle on a couple of these, I think makes sense for sure.
Yeah, if they miss out on Alt, it makes perfect sense for them to go Bowers or some sort of weapon at least for them to at least have an offense that they can use. I know they're kind of built around having a really strong O-line. I feel like that's their preference, but if they don't love any of the other options outside Alt and they miss out on Alt, then they're going to have a second plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's it'd be interesting to see what they do if Alt is gone, but I think he's most likely to be the pick there.
It's also crazy. You can get essentially evens on Alt going at number 7. Like that feels like it's quite likely to happen, but
yeah, I do too. I think trade is most likely to offset that, but I agree. I think Alt is the most likely scenario. Mike says Broncos beat the Bills and Chiefs last year. But no, I mean, this is the thing. Like Denver had Justin Simmons last year, he's gone. Denver had Josie Jewell last year, he's gone. Like they've lost some key pieces defensively. They lost their center too. They lost Jerry Jeudy. Like these are good players that they lost. So they're going to be worse than they were last year as well. So just keep that in mind. Chris saying the Broncos would be the worst landing spot for any quarterback, especially John Harbaugh, especially McCarthy, because Harbaugh has the book on him. That's true. I didn't thought of that. So I don't think McCarthy is going to go to Denver, but that's a good point by Chris. Is Laiatu Latu related to Cameron Latu?
I don't think so. It's a pretty common name.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know anything about that.
Colleges?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, they went to Cameron Lott. Yeah, they went to different colleges.
Lotto went to not Bama. No.
Yeah, he went. Yeah, he went to
Bama.
Yeah. I don't know. I just googled it. I'm not seeing anything, so I doubt it.
I don't think so.
Oh yeah, Chris says
I like
Denver should.
Cameron Lardy though. He was great in college fantasy.
Okay, yeah, I didn't play college fantasy, but I can imagine him
Yeah,
being so.
he was
Chris says
awesome.
that Denver should focus on rebuilding everything first, so they can actually have a longer window with whatever rookie quarterback they get. Perhaps Neon Sanders. Yeah, yeah. If I'm Denver, if I'm Denver, I tank for either Shador Sanders or Drew Aller in 2025 because I don't think they're ready. I would just trade down a bunch of times, get a bunch of picks, and just go from there. Degenerate says that's weird. Live is the most spots. Maybe they just lazy that day. Okay, interesting. Because the professional bettor said that they don't have any live betting. Well, they have live betting for like football and stuff like that, and basketball. I know that. But like live betting for like golf or something like that. Like they did not have that at all. So maybe it just depends on the sport. Sue says, I think the Saints have a 20-year plan to win the Super Bowl. Just not sure what year they are in. Yeah. It's a 20-year plan to go 9-8 or 8-9. And then like maybe one of these years they get a spike year. Like I think that's their plan.
Strange. Kind of like the Steelers plan. Let's just be really consistently average.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like the Saints used to be the Aints, like they used to be the joke of the NFL. So I think I forget who brought it up on we had a show recently. Someone brought up that point. They're like the Saints just don't want to be the Aints again. So it could be true. Like maybe the owners just like, hey, I don't want to be embarrassed. Let's just at the very least be competitive. And the Saints are a team that they could beat anyone, but they could also lose to anyone. And that's kind of where they've been. Chris says the Saints have a 20-year plan to win between 7 and 9 games. Yeah, exactly. Janot says lots of moving to only app to profile sharp accounts better, i.e. draft only app. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So maybe they'll have live betting that way. Benjamin Beer says, is Dennis Allen on the hot seat or no? I have to imagine that he is. I don't know why they hired him in the first place. I thought that was a terrible hire. So I'm kind of surprised he's lasted this long. But yeah, I think if the Saints miss out on the playoffs again this year, I'd be shocked if he's still around. What do you think?
Yeah, I can't see a situation where if he doesn't actually rebuild them into a team that looks like they could win something at least, that has a reasonable amount of hope, I can't imagine why they'd keep him. I think they'll probably at some stage have to start thinking about a proper rebuild with a new coach.
Yeah. The boss saying, what about running backs? I saw you had Corum to the Packers, and that's 50-1. Charlie also has him as the top running back and has good odds on that as well. Running backs, that's such a crapshoot, I think, with all these running backs. Like it feels like they're all the same. Like some do different things, obviously, but like there could be 5 guys who are the first running back taken. Like I think Trey Benson is the most likely to be the first, but I saw Jonathan Brooks is getting some steam, but he's coming off a torn ACL. If he were healthy, I think he'd be the first running back, but he's injured. So yeah, it could be a bunch of guys. According to the Packers, that's not based on any news or any workouts. It's kind of like a placeholder. I'm gonna have I think like more refined picks within the coming days, where I do like more research into like meetings and like the player profiles of like the teams that like to draft certain players. Like for example, the Packers love highly athletic players. So like in the end, in my final mock, the Packers are only going to take highly athletic players or players they met with. That's usually how I set up my final mock draft. So there are going to be a lot of changes in the days to come for sure.
You can get really good odds on Corum to go first, but anything like that far down in the draft is always going to be a little bit of a lottery. But
yeah,
I wouldn't put too much on it. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I don't have any lean on the running backs to answer that question. John says Ben Johnson to the Bills next year if they miss the playoffs. Yeah, if they miss the playoffs, that's they have a lot of expectations. Usually high expectations and low results end up in a coach being fired. So yeah, I think if the Bills miss the playoffs, I think McDermott's probably out. But I think they'll make the playoffs for sure. Ben says McDermott is underrated as a head coach. Well, I don't know if John will agree with that, but he's known for that 9/11 speech that he had last year, which is so bizarre.
I'll agree with
it. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's all the comments we had. Any parting thoughts? John says he's probably rated.
Well, I was going to ask you about the visits. I noticed that with some teams, you've got like 40 different visits listed, and for other teams it's like 10? Is it just the information's not out there, or the teams just haven't visited as many players, had visits with as many players?
Yes. So I just scoop up all the just the data I can from reports. Like sometimes we'll get information, but usually it's just people I follow who post the stuff, and yeah, that's what we do. So it's like sometimes like you just won't get data on some teams. Like some teams just won't leak it. The Patriots used to be infamous for that with Belichick. I think it was I think Rich Eisen made this joke during the combine. He'd be like, player X met with the Browns, the Steelers, and an unknown team, and it'd be like, oh, unknown team's the Patriots because they'd never let that information out. So there's certain teams that are very guarded about that. And others, they just don't care. They let that information flow freely. So that's like why you'll see in the meetings list, whereas like you said, some teams will have like all the players, almost like the 30, and like some teams will have like 2, and like and just can't. I would love to get the data on them, just not available, unfortunately.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, because I try not to get too much into the meetings a little bit, because you can kind of tie yourself up in knots going, well, they've met with this player, but they haven't met with this other player, but that player makes no sense, but at least they've met with them. So yeah,
Yes.
I try to avoid that sort of thought process.
Something about the meetings as well is you could do this. I think this applies more to second round and later. But something you can do with the meetings is like look at the positions that the teams met with. So if let's say, for example, the Vikings, if they met with like 70, if they had 7 defensive tackles visit them, you'd be like, okay, that they're definitely interested in the defensive tackle, and like maybe they won't draft the defensive tackles that they met with, but maybe they're doing this to weed out the players they don't want, and they have their eye on a defensive tackle that they do want. That's something to consider as well. And John's saying here, a lot of the visits are smoke screens. Some of them are for sure, but there's a strong correlation with a lot of teams drafting players that they have in for visits, or positions that they meet highly with, drafting those. It's usually one or the other. But they are useful, and teams really value them. I used to do some work for one of the NFL teams, teams in the NFC. And one of their higher ups in the front office, he's the VP of personnel. He actually emailed me, and he's like, hey, can you give us more data on these prospect visits? And like he told me that like their team values them so highly, not just for them, not just for the players they bring in, but he said, yeah, we noticed that a lot of teams draft the players they take visits with. So he was trying to figure out like which teams are going to draft which players. So, the teams are interested in them as well. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, professional sports teams will take any opportunity to get an edge. So if there's some opportunity, especially in the NFL where there's so much public information, they're going to take that up as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Mike says some of the visits are actually for 4 years down the road when the player becomes a free agent. Yeah, I mean that could be as well. Yeah, I mean sometimes you see teams meet with or players meet with teams they're not going to be there. Like I think it was. I think it was Malik Neighbors took a visit with the Vikings, I think, or they had some sort of meeting. Let me see this real fast, real quick. So what was it today? It was Jane Daniels. Jane Daniels had a meeting with the Vikings. So I think it's very unlikely that he's going to fall. Now I'm sure the Vikings are doing their due diligence, because like, what if he falls to 4? But
he's had 2 with the Broncos as well.
Yeah. So again, yeah. So you're right. Like this could be, hey, if Janie Daniels is a free agent in 4 years, yeah, I think that's certainly true. And then we got another super chat from Degenerate on $2. Thank you so much, Degenerate. Just really appreciate it. I always joke that like Ben, I don't know if you heard this, but given how little YouTube ads pay, like we could go out on the street and pick up change and make more on YouTube, more than YouTube ads. So these super chats are really helpful. Degenerate asks, which picks get traded in top 10? I'll go 4, 5, and 8. Okay. I'll go 4. I think Arizona wants to move down. So I think 4 and 11 get traded, and then I think at Arizona at 11 moves up again, and I think they move to 6. So I think 4 and 6 get traded in the top 10, and there might be another one. I think the Bears probably move out of 9, if I had to guess. I don't know who moves in, but I think someone moves in the 9. So I'll say 4, 6, 9. So what do you think, Ben?
I would be shocked if both 4 and 5 go. I think
Yeah.
in this mock. I know you missed it. I had 4 going back, but 5 going back. But I think 4 is probably most likely to move back. So I'd say 4 gets traded out for 11, and then the Cardinals move back. But where they move back to, I'm not exactly sure. It could be 8 or it could be 9. I'm going to say 8, but I think 9 is possible as well. I just don't think it makes sense for the Giants to trade back based on what they need. It's not impossible, but I don't think it's likely to happen. I think it's more likely to be the 8 or 9 spots where the teams aren't really getting amazing value by sitting there. So I agree with you on 8. I think it could also be 9, and I'm confident it's either 4 or 5.
Yeah, I like 9. Jeremiah says 9 is a good one. They want the second rounder back. Yeah, they have their second round picks. So, yeah, any team that's missing a second round pick, the Jets, for example, they're missing a second round pick from the Aaron Rodgers trade. So, let's just say, for example, we're talking about Brock Bowers being gone. If he and Odunze are gone from 10, I think the Jets are very live to move out of 10. Just because they want more resources, and like, what are they going to do at 10 if both guys are gone? Just panic and reach again for a second round edge rusher? Like, that's what they did last year, and they were trying to trade out like crazy last year. They just couldn't get a deal done. So yeah, I think 9 and 10 could both go. I think Arizona does move up, like I said. So I think 4, 6, 9, 10. I'm gonna say that, or no, I think 4, 6, and then either 9 or 10. I think that's what happens. But I'll say 4, 6, 9 right now. Yeah, Bears can use more picks for sure. Okay, I think that's about it. Thank you so much for everyone for commenting. Just really appreciate and watching the show. Thank you, Degeneron, for the $7 in super chats. Just really, really helpful. Like I said, YouTube ads pay nothing. And this is fantastic support. So thank you so much. Sue, one more comment says Bet365 Neighbors is 4-1 first receiver drafted. Marvin Harris Jr. plus 450 second receiver taken. Some seems like decent chance of that happening. Yes, but like I said, we know Arizona likes Neighbors over Harrison, but we don't know about the Chargers or the Giants for that matter. So if, for example, if Arizona moves out of 4 and someone takes a quarterback, and then at 5, the Chargers could go Harrison over Neighbors, and like that could foil that plot. But yeah, this is the discussion we had earlier, whereas like 4-1 still a good number though. So I would, I would just take Harrison Jr. plus 450 to be the second receiver taken, because I don't see Odunze going before him. I could see Neighbors, but not Odunze.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes a lot more sense to be looking at that pick 4, where that we know they're expecting Harrison to go, rather than just the first player, where it's taking into account all the different ways that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So yeah, that number 4 thing we set up was pretty good. Chris asking, would Harbaugh really draft an Ohio State guy? Yeah, I mean, Pete Carroll drafted quote unquote enemy players when he went from USC to the NFL, right? So it could certainly happen. Why not?
There's always that jealousy aspect that I wish
right.
I had that player on my team, and now I want him.
Exactly. Yeah, he's not beholden to Michigan anymore. That's a good point. Okay, so yeah, Ben, thanks for coming on. Always love to have you on the show. You're a fantastic guest, and love to have you on sometime in the near future. And fantasy football is around the corner, so
it's coming soon. It's always around the corner. Like 365 days of the year, it's either on or around the corner. So we're always talking fantasy and draft.
Yeah, so yeah, I would love to have you on sometime soon for that. Stu says, by the way, Trailblazers, they got the cover tonight for us, so that was great. But yeah, Ben, want to shout anything out? Your website, for example?
Yeah, look, definitely hit us up. Do most of my stuff on Instagram at the Fantasy First Down, but you can also find me on Twitter at Fantasy First Down with no O. My website is ffdfantasyfootball.com. That's ffdfantasyfootball.com. I post a lot of fantasy football ratings there. rankings there, I should say. Also have mock drafts, have a lot of articles. I do weekly articles on Rasbull, occasional recordings and things like that. Mostly do weekly shows during the season. And I promise to always answer any fantasy football questions you have. So hit me up on Instagram or Twitter. I promise I'll answer your questions.
Please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. All that would mean a lot to us. We had one last question, Cameron, asking thoughts on Bowers to the Jets. Yeah, I think it's a logical choice if he's there.
Love it.
Yeah, if he's there, I'd have a tough time seeing him fall past the Jets. So I think that's his floor. Yes. Yeah. So visit Fantasy First Down. That's ffdfantasyfootball.com. I have the link in the description for that. Ben, thanks again for coming on, and everyone, thanks for commenting, watching. We'll be back on Saturday with Tom, and as usual, we're gonna have some crazy conversations with Tom, including the Game of Thrones rewatch. Season 2, episodes 6 and 7, I believe. Those are 2 really good episodes. I watched them already. So I'm looking forward to that. And then next week, usual schedule, except I don't think Kenny's going to be on because he said he has some early meetings for the rest of this month. So Wednesday, not sure if I'll be solo or we'll have a guest on. We'll see. But anyway, tons of draft content coming in the future. And for any other draft content, visit walterfootball.com. But yeah, we'll be back on Saturday. I hope everyone has a great start to their weekend. And once again, Ben, thanks. And I will talk to you guys later.
Have a good one.